Hi everyone, welcome back to today's Love Transformation class. Now, I know many of you have heard of the notion that our loving relationships always start with us, and that often the degree to which we feel loved by another person is really often a reflection of the degree that we love ourselves. Self-love is obviously the key to all of this, and today, I'm really excited to dive deeper into what is self-love, because we've all heard of it and we all know that it should be something that, or it could be something could really benefit us if we have more of. But how do we do that? And what are some of the beautiful keys and fundamentals to being able to really love ourselves in a way that enhances our relationships and our life? Welcome to my beautiful friend, Ismene. Thanks for joining us.
It's lovely to be back. Thanks for having me.
It's always a beautiful conversation that we have, and I so appreciate that not only do you have years of experience that you talk from your own personal experiences, but also your professional background. For those who haven't actually joined us before, haven't met you, can you just give everyone a little bit of a background of what you do, who you are, how you arrived at this work?
So I'm Ismene. I'm a transformational coach, and I'm also an intuitive therapist. And my career started as a therapist. I was doing a lot of trauma work at the beginning, and that gave me a really rich understanding of beliefs, how we work, how often our background and our childhood really impact our relationships in the present. And then since then, it's kind of been this journey of how can I meet people, not only from moving past their pain, but really truly living their potential. And I believe that when we really are self-fulfilling, then we become part of the change in the world. So I also use lots of other things like coaching and intuitive practices. And yeah, so that's where I am now.
You deeply understand how important the degree of respect and love that we have for ourselves, and how that impacts and ripples through all of our relationships and our experience of life. What is it that's really making you feel so passionate about talking about that these days?
Because honestly, it's the key to everything. I mean, it's the key to having beautiful relationships, meaningful intimacy, but also to live life like a beautiful dance and a gift that it is. So I think without that rich practice of self-love, everything feels lacking. So it's the thing that can really impact our life in a really negative way, but it's something that can completely transform our lives. And it's something that we can build on over and over and over again. And it's definitely something in my life that has the one thing that has completely transformed everything that I've been through. So it's the heart of everything, it's the soul of everything, it's the root of everything. So yeah, it's the most important thing to talk about.
Before we dive deeper, what I'd love to actually do, because I think there is somewhat an overlap between our understandings of what self-love is, of what self-care is, and even of what self-worth is. And we use them often in sometimes a similar context, but would you be able to perhaps sort of define, self-love for a start?
I think self-love, it sounds like this great concept, like, yeah, I'm going to love myself. But I think in practice, most people have no idea what this is. And for me, the way that I see it is that it's something that's dynamic. It's the way of being, it's the way of thinking, it's the way of responding to ourselves. It's also the way that we treat ourselves in the day-to-day. So, self-worth comes out of that dynamic practice, and self-care is part of that, but it's certainly not the whole thing. And the way that I really understand self-love is choosing yourself, recognizing your own wholeness. I mean, we were born whole and beautiful and gorgeous and perfect. And then lots of things that happen in our lives, particularly in our childhood, kind of erode that away. We kind of forget our wholeness. So I think self-love as a dynamic practice is more just a remembering of our wholeness. And when we remember to choose ourselves, particularly in love, I am the chosen one, I am the beloved, I am the person that I'm searching for, everything begins to change. Because when we really, even as I'm saying that, I'm getting lost energy from my body. It's when we really remember that and embody it and sit with it, all of our decisions change. What we will tolerate changes, our boundaries change, how we have relationships with people change. So for me, it's a very embodied feeling of reclaiming our worth, reclaiming our power, by remembering that there was never anything wrong with us in the first place. So it's a re-remembering, which is, I know, slightly different way than some other people think about it, but that's definitely been my experience over many years of exploring this. Yeah.
If we were to think about like that girl, right, that is very rich in self-love, that has beautiful self-care practices, that is really feeling high in her self-value and her self-worth. So someone that really embodies what it is that we're talking about, to have that level of self-worth, what would we notice about that girl?
That she would choose to grow through joy and pleasure, that she would accept herself, that she would not be putting her validation outside of herself. And I think this is absolutely key, because we're taught, so this really is a deconditioning process, because we are born with this innate worth, but we live in a society that teaches us to look outside of ourselves. So the difference is, and I can see this always, is the people that go within and find that within is very different. They have like an aura, they have a magnetism, they have a radiance, they shine bright, they take up space, they're present. Whereas, it's funny, I can honestly, now that I'm starting to embody that, I really energetically start to embody it, and I can feel it. So even energetically, because I'll share it because I'm in it, so maybe people can feel it if they're that way inclined. It feels like a very strong energy. It feels like, it looks like golden for me, and it's protected. So I think that's very different, that even if someone looks very beautiful on the outside, if their validation and their sense of worth is coming outside of themselves, it's a very different energy. It's like a seeking energy, it's a disempowered energy. So they become very much more radiant when the power is within. Yeah.
Yes, beautiful. And so literally from a behavioral perspective, from the outside looking in, if you can use yourself as an example, or just other women that you know, what else might we notice about her, the way that she communicates, the way that she holds herself, the way that is this directly related to confidence, would you say?
It is, but I think confidence comes out of living in a way that feels aligned with who you are. I think confidence is another one of those elusive things. I think it's much more that woman, and I can talk a bit about my experiences, that I spent so much of my life looking outside of myself for the answers. And particularly in relationships, and dear God, I wish someone had showed me this about 20 years ago. I wasn't present. So let's just give, because this is obviously about love and looking for love, but let me give examples. So I would be on dates, I would not be present. I would not be getting to know the man that was in my company, because I was so stuck in my head. Am I getting it wrong? Does that sound right? Did I sound stupid? Does he want to be with me? Do you think he'll go on the second date? And then what's happening is, and then I was trying to get it right, and I've read all these books, and let me get all the tricks. And actually, if you were looking on the outside, that person is just not present at all. She's not trying to get to know the person in front of her. I was super reactive, because any little sign of rejection or that they didn't like me, I was flying off the handle. And I think that's the other thing. We can't, if we're not being the chosen one, if we're not being the embodied one, we're missing the intimacy, we're missing the connection, we're missing the love, we're missing the opportunity, because we're so stuck in our own heads. that we're not able to think, wow, this is really magic. I'm spending time with someone. I wonder what their heart's like. I wonder what it's like to be in their world. I wonder if I can use this opportunity to really get to know another human being. Because if we did go with that energy, all of a sudden dating or looking for love becomes a magic dance. It becomes an adventure, not a way to beat yourself up or self-criticize or feel panicky about the other person and not choosing you. So I think particularly in dating and love, everything changes when we validate and love ourselves.
That is so important. And it actually takes me to a conversation that I had with a client last week. And we were talking about this hyper need to assess what's happening in her environment and to get cues and feedback from the way that other people were responding. And on one hand, you know, it is because sometimes we do have this fear of being rejected. But she made a comment. I said that I pointed out that, you know, it was about a need to be chosen.
Yes.
We often bring that from childhood. And she said to me, but doesn't everyone have a need to be chosen? And it's just really curious because in that moment, I actually had a download and realized that in my own journey, I'd gone from being the girl that felt like she needed to be chosen and I sat with it just for a fraction of a second and realized, no.
It's so beautiful. Well, if you think about it in our language, and again, this is things that we're taught, the one is out there, the beloved is outside of ourselves. We use language, and I hear it quite a lot. I'm with this partner and they complete me. I'm looking for my other half. And in all of that language, it suggests that we're not whole, we're not enough, we can't be self-fulfilling, and we can only be truly happy if we meet the other half of us. So I think actually when we're doing that, again, we're searching. When will I feel better? I will feel better when I feel my other half. Whereas when we decide and we remember, and I'm going to keep using this word, we remember, there's a part of us that always remembers, and we shift it completely on its head and say, I'm the chosen one. People may come into my life and it may be beautiful. We're relational beings. We're meant to be in relationship with people. And it does harm us and hurt us when we don't have these deep connections. But that's a secondary thing as an adult, not as a child. And this is the difference when we're an adult. But when we remember and we shift it back in and we come in and we say, wow, I'm the chosen one. And for a period of my time, I may dance with this person. I may journey with this person. I may heal with this person, whether or not it's a date, a year relationship, or for the rest of your life, and you have family or whatever. But even within that, can I remember I am the chosen one? And when we remember that, we start to take responsibility for our own joy, for our own security, for our own commitment, for our own happiness, for our own purpose. And then we can become really intentional. And I think for me, that has literally changed everything. And when I work with clients, this changes everything. Because then we remember we can feel all of those feelings within ourselves, and we do need to nurture them, and we do need to cultivate them, and we do need to, you know, do the romance and take yourself off for dates. I do every week. I love it. But when we're doing that, there's a couple of reasons why that is so much. It makes relationships so much better, and one of them is if you don't know what you want, what delights you, what stimulates you, what turns you on, what's pleasurable, how on earth are you meant to ask for that in a relationship? In my experience, men love it when women tell them what they need and want in a non-entitled way. So there's that. But there's a radiance and an attractiveness and an inner beauty and a light that shines that is really hot, really, really hot. And it's that beautiful feminine flow of people are attracted to you. You can lean back. And also I think this is how we light up the world. This is how we change the consciousness when women remember their magnificence and their light. But I think also it's very healing to remember and to be part of this new revolution, which I feel is happening right now, of these self-fulfilling women that are showing other people and breaking this ancestral thing that women have to starve to be loved, or women need to do all the things to be beautiful. So I think this really is the kind of new wave of being the goddess of the kind of modern day goddess. That's how I see her, that she becomes so fulfilling and so light. And then people just start to move towards her. It's not this, I need to push, or which I don't think for women feels good. So yeah, I feel this is quite revolutionary. It's quite basic, but it's quite revolutionary. Yeah. And can you make, here's something even bigger than this, is can you make your whole life a reflection of pleasure and self-fulfillment? Can you wake up every day, regardless of whether or not there's a man in your life or a relationship in your life, and just be the goddess? Can you? And I think that's the stage further. It's the relationship. This is also what I noticed about energy, and this has been years in the making, but if you just focus on what you need, it's still quite glitchy. It can feel quite, oh, I haven't got it yet. It can feel quite lacking. If we just say, okay, can I be the most self-fulfilled? Can I be the most radiant? Can my life just be so filled with love and pleasure and joy? Can I stretch my container for it? Knowing that when I do that, whatever I'm a match to will just come with me with ease. So it's not like, are you just dressing up for the date? Are you dressing up when you're sat at home? Are you wearing silk pajamas because it feels delightful? And I think that's the difference, like not to do it for the relationship. Can it just be the way that you live and experience life?
That is such a beautiful point. And you've touched on this concept of pleasure and pleasure a couple of times. And that's really what's weaving through here as you're explaining more and more about self-love. Tell us more about the importance of that and in a practical way.
So this is like a really beautiful metaphor that I like to use, is just imagine you're really, really hungry, and then you go to a restaurant. You're just going to eat anything on that menu. You know, we've done that. I've been like eating the chocolate before I even got in the restaurant. The breads come, I've eaten all the bread, and then I'm like, oh, and then I'm not enjoying my meal. So from a psychological and emotional point of view, and this is really key to understand this, if we're starving in some way, we will feel a sense of desperation, because this is, you know, it's primal. We need to feel full up. So what we want to really be thinking about with pleasure is the more filled up we are, the more, the couple of things that we'll notice, we'll be able to use the power of discernment. So if we're on a date, we will be able to hear and notice and be aware of, is this person right for me? In the sense that, do we share the same values? Do I feel heard and seen? Are there things about this person that I feel attracted to? If you're starving, you won't care. You'll be like, I've got a hole and a void that I need anyone to fill. So you ignore all the warning signs. So it's very important to be the more full up that you are, the more you'll be able to discern, the more you'll be able to see the warning signs. The other thing is we're able to be present, and I've talked about this bit earlier, but we'll be able to actually get to know the person. We'll be able to listen more. We'll be able to be kinder. That's very attractive. Can we actually be there for the other person? This isn't just about me. I think that's really important. But also, I think we can feel, my God, it's taken me a long time, so I don't say this lightly, but I felt such a shift in the last 6 months in my relationship when I've become so much more self-fulfilling, because I tell you what, I appreciate what he does for me so much more. Whereas before I was just looking, you're not doing that, you're saying this. I was becoming really critical, and that was really pushing him away for obvious reasons. And what I realized is meaning you're looking to him for something that you need to fulfill in yourself. And then this beautiful self-fulfilling prophecy happens, that the more that I do that for myself, the more I'm not needy to him to give it to me, the more I'm delighted by what he does, and the more that he wants to give it to me. And I've tried to be in that pattern for the last 10 years, and I had to clear a lot of stuff for myself. But so pleasure is really, really key. And we don't often talk about this in society anywhere near enough. And I think it's actually the root of a lot of problems in society, because people are starving and then acting out of that desperation and lack.
When you explain like we need to be more filled up and filling ourselves up, what exactly does that mean? And does it mean the same thing for everybody?
No. And I think that's the beautiful journey that we go on when we allow ourselves, we give ourselves permission for pleasure. Because a lot of us have had society conditioning, parental conditioning, cultural conditioning, where, you know, we say things like guilty pleasure, which makes me feel sick. We have a lot of beliefs around we're greedy if we want more, we're selfish. So actually we're often very restricted in our journey and our self-discovery of pleasure. And remembering that we are these unique beings, part of the pleasure journey is recognizing your unique worth and gifts, but also what delights you. And that is, most people don't know that. They have to get through quite a lot of their own conditioning about, shit, I feel guilty, or I'm being unproductive, or I'm lazy, or people are going to be jealous of me. There's a lot of things around pleasure. So it's a job of moving through that, and then self-exploration. So whether or not this is sexual, whether or not it's what foods delight you, how do you structure your day? You know, what feels fun, what feels ecstatic, how do I get in my body, what feels joyful to wear, how do I like to do my hair and my makeup, what kind of people do I hang out with? So this, and this has been a journey I've been on for many years and will be for the rest of my life. It's a very juicy, and I keep using the word dynamic journey. It's not a, right, well, these are 10 things, have a bath, do the candles, have a massage. Maybe you hate all of those things. You're bored in the bath, don't like people touching your left shoulder. You know, it's like, can we go within and discover our uniqueness? And it's a journey. It's not just something that, oh, I'll just do these 5 pleasurable things. And then how do we get to know ourselves even more? It's actually much deeper than what people originally might think when they think of pleasure.
It's really interesting. If I think about my own journey with that, relocating from Melbourne, where I had a beautiful established life, that it was very abundant with material things, beautiful material things, and something about that life just felt unfulfilling after a period of time. And when I moved to Bali, I downsized to a suitcase and lived in a very minimal way, with a very minimal wardrobe and very minimal amenities, and not all of the beautiful, expensive women's things that I was accustomed to. And that was really beautiful for a time, knowing that I didn't need to find, didn't need to be a shopaholic. I didn't need to be constantly buying or having. But what's been really interesting the last couple of years is noticing and choosing which of the things that I've decided to surround myself with more in, and that is having beautiful clothes, and beautiful fragrances are just a couple of things. And how much pleasure, after spending, you know, some years really living out of a suitcase, how much pleasure I get from that now. So I think in some ways almost stripping everything away and then noticing like what it was that I'm desiring to have back and how pleasurable it is has been a beautiful sort of journey for me.
And I think that's the thing with pleasure, which is different than other things. Sometimes with self-love, it can be a real journey, and sometimes we have to go through a lot of grief about maybe how we haven't loved ourselves or how we didn't feel love. Pleasure is much more in the moment, and we can tell because we're in these beautiful sensory bodies. We were built for pleasure, got all these senses, and it's something that can be instantaneous, and it can be something. So for example, let's imagine we go on a date, it doesn't go how we imagine, we feel maybe a little bit rejected, and it might take quite a long time to get through the beliefs, to go through that, and where was that triggering. That is an active part of dynamic self-love. the exploration. But actually what we can do is come home. So what would be pleasurable for me is I get my candles around my bath. I've got beautiful oils. I have my like sound healing or some music that I really love. And I can just go home from that situation and maybe feel rejected or upset or insecure or all the things that we feel. And I can get in that bath and I can remember through pleasure, hey, I've got me. It's something that we don't have to wait for. It's something that we don't need to be 5 years in therapy for. We don't have to go through the trauma to get. It's something that we can instantly respond to ourselves with and can instantly feel better. Excuse me. And I think when we really allow ourselves, and I think this is the hardest bit, I give myself permission for my life to be pleasurable. And when I remember that my life is pleasurable, everything becomes easier and everyone around me lights up with it. It's really exciting and playful to then play with this idea. How can I make my morning breakfast more pleasurable? Might I light a candle? Might I get up 10 minutes earlier so I can have a little dance before breakfast? And I think that it's a momentum thing. That's what I've noticed. The more I give myself pleasure, the more my life becomes pleasurable. I know that sounds obvious, but I keep finding new ways to delight myself. And it's really, really joyful.
And you touched before earlier as well on some of the social conditioning we have around that, because I know sometimes what comes up, and I will often do this, where I got this from, I really am not too sure, but, you know, I'll wait until I feel as though I've deserved, you know, or I've earned to have that beautiful, you know, chocolate treat, or, you know, I'll be like, okay, I'll work really hard. And then when I get to this and I've earned it, I'll buy myself this. So I think there is sometimes this attitude or this conditioning that we can't just give ourselves all the pleasure that we desire.
Honestly, it's everywhere. When you start, and this is really a journey that I started going on last year, it's literally everywhere. This has been something that's been happening over hundreds and hundreds of years. You know, in this country, a lot of the stuff with the industrial age and things like that. So, and this kind of like 9 to 5 thinking has spread out. It's like we have to work really hard and then we get this time off. And it does take a lot of breaking down. But if you actually think about the kind of craziness of that we're here for a really limited time, like let's just forget everything that we know, okay? Because quite often I think we're going through a point in history, you've got to forget everything that we know to a certain extent. But like, let's just think about it here with a bit of a perspective. We came here for a really limited amount of time in a beautiful body, in a gorgeous, beautiful planet with all these things available to us. And we're here for a limited time. Why on earth would we restrict ourselves? Why would we make things harder than they need to be? Why would we think that we had to earn something? Why would we think that we're only half of a person? I mean, there's all history about why that is, but I think when you really, and this is what really shifted it for me, because I came from a family where I felt starved for many, many, many years. So I was in my baseline was starving myself, not physically eating, but in other areas of my life. And remember, whatever our baseline is, we come back to that. So I just want to put a point in there. Depending on what the people that are listening, their background is, it's going to be harder or easier for some people. So if you've come from a very loving, supportive family where it's felt that there's an abundance of things, it's going to be very much easier for someone like you to be able to take care of yourself. If you've come from a lacking family, or where there's always felt a lack of love or attention or support or safety or protection, it's going to feel a lot more difficult. And I think it's important to remember we're all on a continuum. Wherever you are is absolutely perfect. And we've all got to stretch our container for what we can allow, the good and the bad. And that takes time and patience and kindness and compassion for ourselves. Because I think often people, you know, might hear me speaking now like, well, it's all right for her. But actually, you know, we're all on a journey, and it all takes, it takes time. to stretch that and allow ourselves to have more and more and more. And this has been something I've been doing for the last 20 years. But I think the bit that really, really, really shifted it for me, I'm Aquarius, I care about the collective consciousness, was realizing the correlation between when I am full up, everyone benefits. I become part of the solution, not the world's problems. And when I'm full up and I'm in my overflow, I'm more generous, I'm kinder, I'm more empathetic, I've got more to give. I'm not wrecking my nervous system and my body anymore. I drop the overgiving, and therefore I don't feel resentful. And I become much higher energy, so I've got a lot more to give. And when you really realize that, all those stupid beliefs and restrictive things that are harming people, they dissolve, because that's the truth. It's revolutionary to fulfill yourself.
You mentioned that you could already kind of hear some of the voices saying, but that's all right. But for you and for anyone who's watching that already has these voices coming up saying, yeah, but. Listen to them. Are they their voices? What do we do about those voices that say, yeah, but?
I think treat every aspect of ourselves with kindness. This is also part of the dynamic art of self-care and self-love. Is there's going to be parts in us that feel afraid and unsure and ashamed and not worthy and not lovable. And can you treat that part of you with kindness and care and understanding, and understand that somewhere that voice made sense, and somewhere that was a protection for you? And I think that's as much part of self-love as anything else. We're all going to get triggered. We're all human. I mean, I've had horrible experiences in my life that take me many years to get over, but it's like, can we still be there for ourselves even in our darkness? And those voices generally just need to be acknowledged, to be seen, to be heard, to be reassured and say, but I can choose something different for myself now. But that listening to those frightened or hurt or wounded parts of ourselves is absolutely key. But it's also really key in the dating or looking for love. This is why it can be this real invitation. I feel that everything is an invitation, because if we're on a date and we think, oh, that insecurity came up, or they didn't call back, or it doesn't go in the way that we maybe wanted, that's an invitation. We can use this as an invitation. What is going on inside me? What needs attention? What needs soothing? What needs support? What needs reassurance? And that is a key part of the dynamic art of self-love and self-care. Can we be with ourselves through the whole process?
One of the things that I see a lot of women struggling with a little bit, we have this structure now where, and maybe it's always been like that, that's really based a lot around comparison. We're really sort of benchmarking ourselves, whether that be how well I performed at school compared to other people, or how pretty, I've been told I am. And it always seems to be, we're finding our way or finding our worth or trying to find our value through comparing ourselves with other people. And obviously with social media, this has gotten even more prevalent. I took a spiritual route in order to get over, to move out of this comparison trap, but I'd be interested to hear your thoughts about it.
Yeah, I think it's key. I think I like to think about it like a plant, and the root is self-love. And when we don't, and self-acknowledgement and seeing ourselves as this unique being, and when that isn't in place, then what happens is, imagine the plant, and one of the leaves might be comparison. Another leaf might be, I'm not doing it quick enough or fast enough, or I'm too old, or I'm too young, or that isn't the root. That's just what we can see. That's just what's above ground. Because I can assure you, and this is again something I've really dealt with myself, is when we really recognize our uniqueness. And when we go back to this idea that we're all an ecosystem, there's enough for us all, but it's more than that, because that doesn't always help. We've all got a part to play. And when we remember that unique worth and that we've all got a part to play, it really doesn't matter what anyone else is doing. And you need them to do their bit, because if you're doing your bit and they're doing their bit and they're doing their bit, guess what? We all live in a much better world. So I think, again, you can just bypass these things. I'm not dismissing them. I know when you're scrolling and, oh God, they're so much more successful than me, or whatever it is, they've had a baby, they've got married, they're in a relationship, it's just me. You know, we all do it. But I think a way of just completely bypassing that is coming back to this belief that we are unique. We all have a unique frequency. We all have a unique perspective. We all have unique gifts. Our job is to become more of ourselves, to express more of who we are, to find out what delights us, to find us out what calls us, and find and take up command, get back in your power, to take space up in the world. You don't need to be like anyone else. It's really unhelpful if you're trying to be like anyone else, because the world's missing out on your unique frequency. And when we really remember this, because we do know this at a deep level, it doesn't matter what anyone else is doing. I'm better than that. It's a good thing that they're doing their thing, because together we're building something that's so much better. So yeah, that's for me. When I think like that, the other stuff just absolutely dissolves. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever that we would want to be like anyone else, or that we would judge their journey on ours, because that's not what we're here for. We're here to self-actualize. So remember your unique worth. Be more of yourself, and then life will rush in to recognize you. That's the mirror. That's the beautiful mirror. And then we see ourselves through it. It's beautiful.
When you're working with your clients, are there specific rituals or practices that you share with them that do help to start to step into more of an expression of self-love? Or is it really such an individual thing that it's the journey is finding that out on your own?
I think it's both. I think it's this beautiful self-exploration. But I think for me, something that's really helpful and that I use more and more is actually using the natural rhythms of the natural world. Things like the moon cycles I've been using a lot more. But also interrupting our days or our weeks or our months with ritual, with remembering to stop, and this pattern interrupts. And we remember to be intentional about what it is that we want and how we feel. And then what it does is it keeps interrupting this pattern of just on what we know. And it's like, no, hang on a minute. At the beginning of the month, a new moon, what is it that I desire? You know, what is it that how I feel? And also the other thing, a big part of pleasure and the dynamic art of self-love and working with the seasons and the moon really reminds us of this, is we're meant to feel all things. So if you look in nature and you look in the moon cycles, they're full and then they come in, and they full and everything in between. And a big reason that people don't know what it feels like to feel real pleasure and delight and joy, and their container can't cope with it, even when it comes in, it's like, can't feel too good, is that we're also taught, and this is again conditioning from hundreds of years, that feeling bad is a negative thing. So actually self-love is allowing yourself to feel all the things. And as women with this beautiful, flowy, emotional, gorgeous, messy, all over the place beings, and when we shut that off, and the pain and the discomfort and the vulnerability, we restrict the joy and the pleasure. So actually when we start to chart cycles, we can give permission for every aspect of ourselves, the inner, the outer, the falling away, the rising, because in society there's not much of that, and we can feel a lot of shame or that we're getting it wrong. rather than remembering our wholeness and that natural process to be all things. Yeah.
You have a beautiful gift also to share with our audience. Thank you so much for all the time and energy that you've put into creating this, which I know is going to be of such value. Can you tell us a little bit about your gift?
So just to really help get into the radiance, I'm doing affirmations that lead to music. So anytime that you really need to bring your power back within, light yourself up, you can listen to that. And there'll also be a worksheet, journal prompts, just to really start to consolidate some of the themes: what lights you up, what delights you, how you incorporate and stretch more pleasure in your life, all of those things. So yeah, a really practical way of starting to go down this self-exploration journey.
Beautiful. And I'm going to ask you for your final thoughts in a moment, but I just want to quickly remind everyone, obviously the links to access this gorgeous free gift and to also connect with Ismene on her socials and read up more about her is below the video today. Thank you so much for joining us. It's always a pleasure. And what would you like to share? Is there any final thoughts?
As the final thought, because it's changed everything, just remember, I am the chosen one. I am the beloved. I am the other half. I am the one that I've been searching for, and I can be the partner that I desire to myself. And that's where the transformation and the change really starts to happen. You're enough, you're whole, you're beautiful, you're gorgeous. It's just a process of re-remembering.
Absolutely. It is really just a process of coming back to who you really are. Thank you so much for reminding us of that and all the other beautiful wisdom that you have downloaded and shared today. And thanks everyone for tuning in for another day on the Love Breakthrough Virtual Retreat. We're having so much fun here. Thanks, Ismene.
Welcome.
And we will see you all again tomorrow. Bye.